Live from Austin, Texas, this is the Plutopia News Network Happy Hour. And the not ready for cable news players are partially here. I'm Scoop Sweeney, and our moderator for the evening is John Lebkowski. Hello, John.
Hello. You know what? I'm not sure that we're live.
It says
because
live.
I don't see it on there.
It says live on Facebook.
Huh?
It says live on Facebook, man.
Yeah, but I don't see it. I don't see it on there.
Oh, Facebook never lies, man. Gotta go with that.
Yeah. Zuck tells no lies.
Okay, guys, I'm going to do it. Well, I mean, I'm actually looking at the Plutopia News Network page, and I don't see us on there. So something has not happened.
Click on videos.
Oh, I see it. Oh, you know what? It went live on my page. On John's page. So let's see what I can do. I can put this on there though. Hold on.
And for all you folks listening in on the replay, this is what happens when you get Zuckerberg. Just make a note of that.
Well, I don't know. You know, I'm using a different computer.
I thought we're supposed to be the nerds who knows how this stuff works. This is not helping our cred.
Hey, you're just letting all the other victims know. Even the nerds get zuckered.
I got zuckered yesterday. I didn't get zuckered. I got Cisco'd.
Zuck it up, Chris.
Yeah. I saw a really funny tweet today, though, about Zuckerberg. He was saying, Mark Zuckerberg calls for breakup with the U.S. government for being too powerful.
Yes, and we believe that.
I don't know what ground Zuck can stand on, Chris, when he somehow thinks it's reasonable that a single tab in my web browser should take up 4 gigabytes of my RAM since his redesign.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my gosh, this is too weird what's going on here.
You sound surprised.
Well, so I'm using a different computer. And I went through the same steps that I usually do, but it did not successfully launch Plutopia Live on the Plutopia News Network page. It launched it on my personal stream feed.
Huh.
And then I took the URL for this live stream and pasted it onto the Plutopia page. And normally what it would do is it would display the live stream, but all it's doing is displaying the URL. So nothing is working the way it normally does. And it must be because I'm using a different computer. That's all I can figure.
User-friendly.
But we are live. We're just live on John's stream, our feed.
Well, I will turn around the edited recording and dump it onto our page properly.
I think that's where we are.
Where are we?
We're off into the ether.
It's just a series of tubes, and you went down the wrong one.
I went down the wrong tube. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're here.
All right.
Everyone has
part of us are here. I thought Heather was coming.
She may still be joining us. I know she was out running an errand. We will see. David apparently cannot join us. He's had something come up.
Yeah. Well, so this is, so we have Chris Boyd with us and Kevin Welch from the EFF-Austin Board of Directors and another member of the Board of Directors, moi. So you have 3 members of the EFF-Austin Board of Directors, which is, I think, 7 members or something.
It's 9, but who's counting?
Members. So there's a few who couldn't make it. But we have enough here to have a pretty great conversation. We have the right people in the room.
Hopefully.
And the question is, what shall we talk about?
I don't know. There were a lot of topics suggested. What do you guys want to talk about?
Well, we could talk about the FCC and what's going to happen with the FCC, because I picked up some intelligence about that today.
I will be honest, I have not exactly researched that very much, other than that the people I trust say that this new dude they appointed is not good, but I've literally never heard of him, know nothing about him. So I would just be a dude on the internet mouthing off about something he hasn't researched, which is very, par for the course on the internet. But I don't have strong opinions yet because I haven't really read much about him yet.
Well, politically speaking, you have a deadlock. And
right, I heard a 2-2 deadlock is what I
2-2
was
deadlock.
hearing. Chris, have you encountered this dude before? Is he been on some board or some regulatory body?
I have not heard of him before. I do not recognize the name. But given the rushed appointment, I expect that he's horrifically bad.
Well, given past experience, the nominees for just about anything have proven to be particularly bad.
Let's see if I can find his name. Maybe I can get us.
I think it's Symington.
Symington. While we are recording the podcast, let's find out in real time with our listeners.
It's Nathan Symington, and he was a Trump nominee to the FCC, and McConnell pushed him through like really hard.
He's formerly a senior advisor to the Department of Commerce. He's also been a legal associate who's been associated with finance at various law firms. He also has an MA in music theory, which is kind of cool. Actually, it looks like he was a musician before he became a lawyer.
So
yeah,
and for position on telecommunications policy.
Yeah.
Well, The Verge refers to him as a social media hawk.
He plays violin. Yeah.
He fiddles around. Okay.
Hawk.
Is he any related? The last name Symington, I can't remember who the politician was, but that's a familiar name. I don't know if it shows his parentage. I think that was a conservative politician years ago.
It's different spelling, I think. You're thinking about Stuart Symington.
Okay.
He was S-Y. I think this is S-I.
We're not dealing with somebody who completely doesn't know what they're talking about, because he, at the very least, is on the record as saying that the president's legal interpretation of Section 230 is bollocks.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
That's actually a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Surprised he got nominated with a comment like that.
It hadn't tweeted at Trump or shown to him on Tucker Carlson or Hannity show. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We will hear more. I would suggest people read whatever Tech Dirt puts out on him in a few days. They've basically been my only source of reasonable tech reporting recently.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
I'm looking to see if they have anything on him right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine
they refer to him as unqualified. I can see that already.
I mean, it seems like he'd be great if he wants to sub in for the Charlie Daniels band. I'm not sure how great a lawyer he is.
Okay, so here's what Tech Dirt says. Symington has absolutely no experience in telecom issues, consumer protection, or other complicated issues facing the FCC. He was nominated because he literally helped write Donald Trump's idiotic and dangerous attack on Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and is expected to continue, at least performatively for distraction's sake, the campaign at the FCC. If you ask Trumpland, the campaign is necessary to stop, quote, censorship of conservatives online. In reality, that censorship doesn't exist. In fact, reality indicates the opposite. The campaign is really about bullying tech giants into not policing disinformation and hate speech, now cornerstones of GOP power, which, of course, we all know is bogus, and Section 230 is a good thing to talk about. What will happen if you undo the Section 230 safe harbor protections is that not only will will there not be free speech? There won't be any speech. These guys won't be able to post anything.
Well,
Twitter is no longer going to allow Donald Trump to post whatever is in his head because they would be held liable for it.
John, so I'm not spreading falsehood to your viewers. I read up a little more. No, actually, the guy, what's his name? Symington. Yeah. No, he supports the harebrained interpretation of 230. I misread his Wikipedia bio. Specifically, he was appointed after Trump was proposing appointing Michael O'Reilly, and it was O'Reilly who thought the 230 interpretation from the Trump administration was ridiculous, and his nomination was withdrawn. So this dude totally supports the bonkers 230 interpretation.
Right. So if you want to tank the U.S. technology stock market, you repeal Section 230. That's it. That's all you need to know. You repeal 230, everything in your stock portfolio, if you are so lucky to have one, goes to hell in a handbasket. Because
so what you're telling me is that I should short Facebook right now.
We only have a few more weeks until January 20th when the world changes, hopefully.
Yeah, but maybe not the FCC, because I think that once these guys are appointed, could Biden remove the guy?
Probably not. I think that they have.
I think they have set terms. I'm not a lawyer, just pretend to be a tech lawyer, but I think they have set terms, and that's why I think everybody was flipping out and acting like that this was just a parting stink bomb Trump was throwing.
Yeah, one of many. But the problem is, if you repeal 230, then essentially you declare every platform that has user-generated content. That's Reddit, that's Twitter, that's Facebook, that's Parler, that's Gab, everything where it is basically not a newspaper's website that allows people to post things now becomes liable under libel and law. And so what do? They shut down the comments. And then what does that mean? That means that Twitter, Reddit, et cetera, no longer exist.
Yeah, it seems to me it's just an extension of the common sense legal principle that I, shouldn't be held responsible because my friend did something stupid,
Yeah.
Now, here's a question. Yeah, if they do get rid of that, what about the newspapers who are online? Would that online functionality no longer be possible because of that change?
I am not a lawyer, but I do not think so. What they would have to do is just shut down their comments section so that people could not comment on any articles that they published.
Yeah, the newspapers vet their content. A responsible news organization would. What Section 230 says is that if I have a platform that carries content that is added to that platform by other people who I don't control, as in Facebook, as in Twitter, etc., then I can't be held responsible for that content. And it's more complicated than that. There's more to it.
Right.
That's fundamentally what it says. Now, what the Trump people seem to believe or seem to be saying is somehow they think that if you did away with Section 230, then they would be freer to post whatever they want to. But really, the opposite would be the case. And I don't think they understand that. I don't think they realize that.
No, they're conflating the First Amendment and Section 230 for starters. First of all, you're absolutely right that you certainly wouldn't see any comment sections on any website that would be like non-moderated if you got rid of Section 230. There'd always be moderator approval, basically. And it also, you'd basically see people like doing drive-bys of they'd try to get rid of websites they don't like by posting links to copyrighted songs, to illegal material. They just come and post a comment there, and without Section 230, you're liable for it even though you didn't host it. And nobody would share or retweet anything or share a link on Facebook. Like, nobody do that because you could be liable if the link broke the law somehow. So break the internet for starters. But I mean, it's just also that like Trump claims that getting rid of Section 230 would somehow prevent Diaper Don from trending on Twitter. And it's like, no, that's just free speech. We can make fun of him for being at a comically small table because he's not a king. Has nothing to do with Section 230.
Right. So something you said there, Kevin, I got to go in a mini rant.
Okay.
Okay. The internet is not the World Wide Web. The internet is not Twitter. And as a person who's been on the internet and actually manages the connections and connectivity that help make the internet, I have issues with it's on the internet or it'll break the internet type phrasing. And because
I totally get it. I mean, you're absolutely right. The internet is TCP. The web is an entirely another layer on top of it.
Well, it's just a different way of understanding break the internet, because break the internet to you, Chris, means break the technology of the internet.
Right.
But to somebody else, it may mean, for instance, difficult to openly post whatever the hell you want to on
and to you, break the internet is a network outage.
Correct.
Yeah, if you break
and actually, in honor of expecting this conversation, I wore a very, very old T-shirt from the very early days of the internet. This was given to me by a company called Ascend that was schmoozing MCI at the time, because they were trying to push their box, which was this just miracle box. This box you could plug a DS3 into, which is 672 simultaneous phone calls equivalent, AKA modem sessions, and it would spit out fast Ethernet on the back end. And so this was one of the very, very, very earliest massively scalable boxes that enabled the early days of the the mid days of the dial-up internet before broadband technologies actually caught on. So for me, the internet is the packet pushing network where all the networks speak border gateway protocol to each other, and all the magic happens that enables you to get your content from Facebook to your machine, whatever it may be.
So what's the difference between broadband and the internet?
Okay, so broadband is the access technology. So that's the DSL line, the cable line, the VDSL line, the 4G, the LTE or the 5G link between the ISP's infrastructure and your device. So broadband,
last mile, basically.
Yeah, pretty much it's the last mile. Although I would say that, 400 gigabit per second backbone internet connection, that's kind of broadband too. So the broadband is it refers to how fast can you push the bits from one end of the link to the other end of the link.
I mean, and to get really nerdy, Chris, it basically refers to the frequency range of a spectrum band, the signal in the wire, right?
Yeah, correct. And so when you're talking access technologies like DSL or cables, cable internet is truly broadband, because it's in a modern implementation, it really goes from baseband, which is just above DC, or actually DC, all the way up into the gigahertz spectrum right now. And then they put in these little subcarriers and they run different channels. One, some to deliver video, some to deliver internet access, and some to deliver other stuff. So it's literal hand waving. Sorry.
Well, to a lot of people, not this crowd, we understand a lot more about the internet than your average consumer. Your average consumer, if their Facebook or their Twitter or whatever is broken, then the internet is broken, because that's their tie-in to the internet. And I can understand how they would think the internet was broken, because they don't know all the parts that all the other things you can do.
Right, correct. Like, for instance, this afternoon, early evening, Reddit had a pretty major outage. You could not get any Reddit page, but you could get to the page that Reddit was saying, we have a problem, and you could click on the link to the Reddit status page and say, Reddit saying, we have a problem, therefore it's not the internet, it's Reddit. And there are a lot of people that don't make that distinction.
And it's not even that like Reddit's server isn't working, because you got that page. Like, right. If for listeners out there, there's a thing called HTTP status codes, which is basically a server telling your computer what happened when you asked it to do something. There's a whole range of codes called the 500 codes, which is basically the server saying, you did everything right, I screwed up, I don't know right. how I screwed up.
But even here, it's like I was talking to the CDN, because I was getting the Reddit CDN, because I was getting the page that says, oh, wait, the CDN can't talk to our backend server. So it's like, I can talk to Reddit just fine, but then the thing that does all the magical load balancing and talks to the Amazon cloud, that was not working. So it was like, yeah.
And just as a final little nerd gift to your guests, if you've ever pressed F12 in your web browser, Chrome or Firefox or Safari or whatever, that opens the dev tools, which is where nerds like me who do web development like go to build our web pages. There is a tab in your browser that is it's labeled different things, but it's usually called the network tab. If you type in a website into your address bar and hit go, you'll see that you're not just talking to one website and one web server these days. When you go and visit a website, you're usually talking to, like, honestly, a couple dozen that ultimately build the web page you actually see in your web browser.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, I spent my early days in this business, in the telecommunications business, and I was always slightly surprised after working at a major telecommunications equipment manufacturer that I picked up the phone, landline phone, I must say, and got dial tone. That seemed like a minor miracle to me. And so, you know, it's like, to me, we've just piled layers and layers and layers and layers of magic upon magic. And the fact that it works at all as well as it does is.
I mean, Chris, it's at this point, it's all built out of JavaScript, which literally shouldn't work.
So how resilient is it, Chris?
The internet itself, as in the packet pushing routers, is extremely resilient. But as we see occasionally, things break. Azure breaks. Amazon Web Services breaks. You know, the big back-end infrastructure clouds that drive so many of the popular websites today, they are robust yet fragile, as I like to describe them.
I mean, that would frankly describe most of the software too, robust yet fragile. Like, you know, I just cracked JavaScript, which is what most of the internet is built in, albeit a lot of modern web development doesn't actually take place in JavaScript anymore. It takes place in a Microsoft superset of JavaScript called TypeScript, which is like JavaScript, but kind of less terrible. But basically, JavaScript is a language. You know, it was created by Brandon Eich back at Netscape in like 1995. He built it in a week, which is both impressive and also explains everything wrong with it. But basically, one of his goals was he built a language that the whole point of it is it will not break no matter what. And actually, JavaScript is kind of incredible as a programming language where, yeah, it rarely, if ever, straight up fails/crashes. But what this means is that it is so dedicated to making your buggy, terrible program run no matter what you wrote, that if you wrote something bad, it won't crash. It will just interpret it in a nonsensical fashion, which is why you'll visit web pages that they run. They won't like crash and give you a blue screen of death like an old Windows program. They'll just do insane stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Like we all will do from time to time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Heather is here. I think.
Yeah, hi. There's a little bit of commotion. So do you want me to put my camera on? I'm kind of
Sure. We dig commotion.
You dig commotion?
Yeah.
Well, I'm in a non-office book space. I'm just in a I'm in a wall behind
There
me.
you go.
There I am I'm holding the phone this time. So yeah, I think I was the one that brought up the idea of cyber squatting. So I don't know if y'all
We
wanna
haven't
talk
addressed
about
it yet. We saved it for you.
Yeah, we figured that you would be the one to squat.
Well, I mean, I only brought it up because I was having an issue. I won't get into all the details, but there was a website. Well, no, maybe I should. But the idea that you've got your name, and many people do a .com with their name, and then you've got all the other .net or .io
.xyz.
whatever. And then I was just curious, and it was like everything after my name, because I'm obviously I'm being very egotistical, and I have a website that's a .com, but I was like, who the hell would who? And then I found out that it was all in one. I don't know what the term is again. Kevin reminded me, but like it was like one domain name holder had like all these variations with the extensions. And that was when I started to go down a rabbit hole about cyber squatting. And Kevin actually said that Chris is it's one of your pet peeves, is this whole squatting on these.
I seem to recall Chris ranting about this to me in the past over drinks and possibly dressed up as cyborgs at some party.
But I mean, and just to finish, like the idea is that you have to pay stupid amount of money just to own your own name or own that domain name.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't even know where I was going with this, other than like I just find it incredibly annoying that this even exists. And I don't even know how we could even stop this practice.
Well, so just to clarify, you're talking about people who will buy up domains that other people might want.
Yeah.
And
she
and
noticed
then sell
that
them at a very high or somewhat high cost.
She noticed that, she owns heatherbarfield.com, but she noticed somebody sitting on like heatherbarfield.net and heatherbarfield.edu and all these other top level domains.
Wait a minute. Don't make it about me, because it's not. It's about Julia Roberts, okay? And it's about kevinwelch.com. Like it's about chrisboyd.com, right? So like this idea, like it's just this idea that especially when you become a celebrity of some sort, like there's this article, this academic article I read around Julia Roberts getting her domain name, or Hillary Clinton, right? Like Hillary Clinton had to just basically take every HillaryClinton.com on the planet and just buy it all up for herself. And it's just interesting how you can some people can get the visibility that they want online and have the means to do it, and others don't. I mean, I don't even know what my real point is, other than like cyber squatting is just a neat sounding term, but with a really annoying practice.
Well, there used to be a thing that so let's say you took let's say you had Facebook.com, and Facebook had the trademark to the term Facebook. Then
that's what it was. Hillary made a trademark of her name.
Yeah, they can usually get the domain name based on the fact that they own the trademark. There's a way via ICANN, I think, to deal with that.
Yes.
Yeah, most people don't trademark their names unless they are very famous.
Right. So
damn, I better get busy.
There you go.
But I remember when they expanded all the available ways you could have a domain. It was originally .com, .net. Then they spread it out. .io, which we have for Plutopia, was added, and I get for my own domain. I get emails from the company that provides my internet domain name service, and they're always saying, "Oh, why don't you buy .xyz.net whatever?" So I don't care. I only need the one.
So here's the problem as I see it in a nutshell. So we had comnet.org in the early days, and then we had the country code top level domains, which are 2-letter country codes. So you could register .us, you could register .io, and I apologize to the residents of .io. I do not remember which country that refers to. And that was it. That globally, that was it. Those were the only top level domain names. Then we, .com, .net, .org started to get rather crowded. And then you had the trademark the trademark rapid jurisprudence type dispute resolution. So if you had a trademarked domain name and somebody else had registered in .com and somebody else had registered it in .org, you could go seize it effectively, from them in the .org domain because you had a registered trademark for that. And this dispute resolution process was working reasonably well because you didn't have, BurgerKing.com and BurgerKing.org going to McDonald's. So that was kind of what they were trying to prevent. Then ICANN, in my personal opinion, got captured by the companies that ran the domain name registrars. And these are the companies that, let you go and create a new domain name in .com, .net, .org, whatever. And so they started creating all these new global top level domain names, or GTLDs. And so you have .xyz, you have whatever. I mean, there are literally hundreds of them now. And then you had companies wanting to create them, like Coca-Cola wanted to create .coke. And, it's like in making the letter COKE go to the Coca-Cola website breaks a lot of deep, long-lived code in the domain name resolution software that runs on everything that can resolve a domain name. So anyway, big problems coming soon on that level. But then, so since ICANN got captured, they started creating all these new GTLDs, and they would reserve a 6 to 9 month period for what they called the gold rush. And the gold rush phase was when you would let all the trademark owners get first dibs on reserving their domain names at usually ridiculously high prices to get IBM .whatever. And so that way IBM could then show in court that they have protected their trademark by registering IBM .whatever under every GTLD. The whole thing is a cash grab scam, in my opinion. And somebody needs to get back in there and get ICANN back under control and put a stop to this crap.
I mean, how did the domain name registrars get so powerful, Chris? Because that just sounds like an excuse to print money for them, basically.
It is, and that's the reason that they went. And it's like there is a cooperative process to elevate people to the ICANN board. I think Joy Ito, your friend, was on it at one time.
Yeah, he was on
it. And so what they did was they just got more people pushed into the board of ICANN that oversees this process, and then boom.
Who does the pushing? I mean, is this by nation states, by companies?
No, it's so you can individuals and organizations can register to be members of ICANN, and then you get to vote on this stuff. And so it's like at one point I was a member of the American Registry for Internet Numbers, which is the group that oversees allocation of IP addresses in North America and a few other regions. And, I could go vote on those things.
In your experience, all these domains, when they do the gold rush and IBM buys up all these various versions of their domain,
right,
how many of those actually are nothing more than just a redirect to IBM.com?
Every single one.
So they serve no real purpose other than to grab the name and say, you can't have it.
Exactly. They are showing in court, because if somebody then registers a similar or identical domain name in another GTLD, and the company treasurer says, I'm done with this, I'm not going to do any more of these $10,000 registrations to protect our trademarks because it's ridiculous. And then they go, somebody registers that company's domain name and points it to a porn site. And then they go and, they sue the porn company, and they say, you can't use that domain name. They can say, yeah, but you didn't register it in the gold rush period. Therefore, and a company could have their entire trademark invalidated theoretically.
Chris, do you think would reform be as simple as just saying that if your senior management at a domain name registrar, you can't serve on the ICANN board? Do you think that would fix the problem?
That would help the problem, but they would also have to undo a lot of the policies that allow creation of new GTLDs. And then the other thing is we need to move beyond the domain name system. And I've been thinking about this for a very, very long time, and I'm having a very hard time breaking out of the DNS mold. But when I do, I will hit you up for some venture capital.
Well, I mean, it's terrifying when you realize that we only got the DNS lookup calls encrypted in the last year or two. It's an old technology.
Yeah, but technically the lookups aren't entirely encrypted. They're cryptographically signed if you're talking about DNSSEC.
I'm talking about DNS over HTTPS.
DNS over HTTPS needs to go the hell away. It's a terrible idea. It breaks DNS in many of the same ways that Coca-Cola wanting just COKE typed into a web browser to work and get them to the Coca-Cola.com.
Well, I mean, yes, it's people trying to retrofit security onto a technology that never was designed with that in mind in the first place.
Right. So the answer to make sure that the computer that you are talking, or that you have looked up, the IP address that you have looked up for your computer to connect to via HTTP or whatever, HTTPS or whatever protocol, is the one that the domain name owner intended, is DNSSEC, because that will solve that problem. But all of these other things of, your ISP knowing that you looked up apple.com, that is not solved by DNSSEC, but making sure that your ISP isn't lying to you is solved by DNSSEC. So there's a lot of research work to be done in this area. There's a lot of innovation that needs to happen in this area, but DNS over HTTPS is not the answer, because if Firefox makes that the default, they are going to break hundreds of millions of corporate users trying to get to internal websites where the domain name resolver assumes that you're talking to your local Active Directory server, and utsystem.local for me is a different website than utsystem.edu.
Right. And Chris, I'll just say that I hear you on misusing the way the tech was designed, because I know a lot less about that part of the web stack than you. But modern URLs are like hilariously broken considering what the like actual URL specification is.
Right.
Like the actual specification, when you get to the slash after .com, you know, and have like slash home slash, you know, all that stuff, that's supposed to refer to an actual directory path on the server. But modern web servers have basically written their endpoints to capture those lookups and use them to serve various web apps that have nothing to do with any directory structure on the actual computer.
And look,
I do it. I'm guilty too. We all do it.
I'm actually fine with that because, you know, once I've made sure that my network resolves that whatever.com to an IP address, and I'm routing your packets to that IP address, my job is done. I don't give a crap what the web server on the other end of that does. As long as the packets between the web server and the end user get there, my job's done. I'm done.
I mean, it works a lot of the time, but definitely the original idea was Tim Berners-Lee idea is supposed to be the URL is a unique resource in hyperspace, and it's not a way to hack around that hypertext transmission protocol doesn't have any easy means of managing program state, which is what we're using all this routing pathing to get around, basically.
Are you arguing against evolution?
I don't know. But just to finish this topic, to take it back to cyber squatting, once again, coming at it from the politics space, I can say that a very common tactic in the political web space is to buy similar sounding domain names to an actual political organization or candidate's name. And then, but they're bought by rival campaigns to directly undermine the campaign that people were looking for. So like if you were on a campaign against, say, Hillary Clinton, you might buy Hillary Clinton with an E instead of an O in her last name so that somebody who makes a typo thinks they went to her website and it's actually hey, Hillary Clinton in Benghazi, look at the scandal here. Like this is there are political operatives who their whole job is getting paid to buy up these names and make fake attack websites.
Yep.
You guys are destroying my faith in the internet.
Well, Chris,
in the World Wide Web.
Well, the World Wide Web. Yeah.
Well, Chris, in your perfect world, if you had a call, it sounded like you might want to tear a lot of this technology down and start over.
What I would like to do is have a time machine. They don't actually have to be able to travel to the future, but I would like to be able to show the internet and World Wide Web, and I specifically said internet because we've made a few mistakes in that way too. Show the internet and World Wide Web to the people who are developing the early technologies, because there were a lot of design decisions that were made to get it working, and nobody really had any idea that we would still be living with the consequences of these design decisions today.
Well, they kind of didn't understand kind of how it was going to grow.
Exactly.
Some people didn't even really understand that it would mainstream to the extent that it did, though others were pretty clear that that was going to happen.
Right. I mean, if we could have gone back and shown Vint Cerf the internet of today, we would have IPv6 from the get-go.
But part of what we're talking about is really related to the inherent decentralization of the internet, which was part of its character back then, was that, you weren't going to have some authority for how the network rolled out. And this is why network administrators always thought the internet was really sloppy and terrible, because it didn't have a lot of control on it and you could do stuff, and that to some people, that was like the strength of it. That's one of the great things about it, is that
Right.
it can just roll out and morph, and all kinds of things can be done with it.
Right.
But keep patching things together, pretty soon you've just got a patchwork.
And you know, it kind of works. It actually works really, really well.
Surprisingly well.
And you know, pieces of it rise in and out of usefulness, like, you know, and there's certain pieces of the basic tech that are almost vestigial at this point, and then other things that have filled in that role as people have changed how they're using the network. Like, to Chris's point that the World Wide Web is not the internet, you know, it used to be that other means besides HTTP of talking on the internet used to be a lot more ubiquitous, like Telnet, for instance. And this is why there were internet ports. Internet ports, though, can almost feel like this weird antiquated thing these days because nobody's talking on the Telnet port anymore, or stuff like that. On the other hand,
well, that's not 100% true.
Well, not 100%.
I'm still telling that to the well.
Yeah, true. But I guess, just the other thing I was saying, though, at the same time, there was this assumption that you would have one process per port on the server you're talking to, but even that's not true anymore, because some servers will serve different host names on the same port, and that's why there's now the server name identification field, right, which also became a privacy problem because that wasn't encrypted, though it is now.
So,
yeah. Go ahead, John.
Well, go ahead.
No, you first.
Well, but what I was going to say was a little bit changing the subject, because we're kind of like four white guys geeking out, and Heather had come. She had some other things she wanted to talk about. And one that I was really interested in was, you mentioned issues with email, and I kind of want to understand what those issues are. But go ahead, Chris, if you had something to say first, and then maybe Heather can step in with.
Now, I will shut down my conversation about the techniques of TCP/IP port identification and sharing and et cetera, so forth, 5 tuples. That's enough.
We can start a flame war about it later.
Yeah.
It sounds like we have several episodes ahead of us. Yeah. But Heather, you wanted to, you had something about email.
I'm following along with everything. Just to be clear, like, I telnetted the hell out of the 90s. Okay. So I was on Muds and Moos a lot.
You still have your Lambda Moo account, don't you?
Yeah, I'm on Lambda Moo still. And did a whole research paper on the performance of Muds and Moo personalities. So
did you know about Metaverse Moo? Yes. There were a couple other Steve Jackson's thing. That was Steve Jackson's thing. He decided the reason that Illuminati Online became an ISP is that he built it as an ISP mainly so that he could sell this product, which was a Moo, a subscription Moo, which was Metaverse, which was created by Doug Barnes, who's now a tech attorney in New York. But at the time, Doug Barnes was like a sysadmin, and he came to EFF-Austin with the idea of building a LAN for RoboFest so that we could show people what a LAN is and how it works. And one of the things we would do with that LAN is put this Moo in there, and it was called Metaverse. And I think Neil Stevenson may have pulled that for a book he wrote.
Yep.
And the thing that they built was so compelling to Steve that he said, "Oh my God, this could be like the greatest thing ever." Steve being a game designer and game maker, and launched the Metaverse Moo, which actually did not work out commercially. And eventually IO.com or Illuminati Online became just an ISP, and Metaverse went away. It's an interesting old EFF-Austin story.
Yes, the anecdotes.
I'm sorry I got off on a tangent there, but go ahead.
Well, I will talk. So my main thing about email lately is that I hate it. But I also am not really happy with Slack, and I'm not. So, I mean, ultimately, it's also this. It's also if you use something other than G Suite or all of these other whatever, the Yahoo, all that stuff, you know, it's a very simple, clean interface. And what I'm doing is I have like 10 different Gmail accounts, because every time you work at a nonprofit, every time you work in education, they all have contracts to get these G Suite accounts. And I literally have, like, of the nonprofits that I work with and the accounts that I have from education, like that alone, I can fill on my hand, right? And people are always like, "Oh, which email are you at now, Heather?" And I'm like, it's not my fault. Like this is like, all these places want you to have their organization plus .org or .edu, and I'm in this constant like identity crisis of like, well, which email do I respond to in which circumstance? And it's become so nutty that I'm finally I am like pulling and funneling all of them down and deciding. Basically, it's like a friend list delete, but with email. And I finally put like a box trapper on my email system for that. Webhosting.coop is the hosting right now. So I'm just like like we were talking about antiquated systems, and I'm like, well, I'm just now learning these antiquated systems, and I'm really like, when it comes to email, I mean, I was Microsoft Outlook certified sometime in 2002, 2001. So I know PST, but I hate Outlook, and I don't even like Thunderbird very much anymore. Like, I'm at the point where I'm just going straight up webmail horde email that has no graphics, no buggy spyware, and like, because every email list I'm on, every click I do, every time I open it, they always know what I'm up to. And I'm sick and sick and sick of it. And I'm like, no. So now I have to do a whitelist and blacklist everything, which, both of those terms are awful also. So, but I'm learning how to do like DEFCON level 5 email destruction. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Like, has anybody else experienced this anxiety?
You pay a lot more attention to your email than I do. I have tons of email coming in, and I zero in on the ones that matter, and certainly Google lets you set things up so that you can make sure you're keeping track of the stuff that does matter. And Google actually pulls a lot of the spam out and has various protections and that sort of thing. So I'm like a Gmail power user for many years now. I have a whole bunch of Gmail accounts that I have to I have 5 that I have to monitor. And at one time I would forward them all into one account, but that was just too crazy and hard to keep track of. And they're all getting tons of spam, and I got put on different email lists, and I'm just deluged with email, probably gigabits of email every week. And I just kind of, gigabytes. I just kind of have learned to filter stuff out with my consciousness and just zero in on the things that I care about. And I don't really feel any anxiety about all that other stuff.
Well, I just shared a link in chat that I recommend to anybody who feels passionately about the issue Heather raised. But it's been on Cory Doctorow's mind too, this issue, because he wrote a wonderful little piece on pluralistic.net titled "Email a Faction is Digital Carcinization." But it's his commentary on a recent XKCD comic that basically has the thesis that every form of communication eventually turns into email over a long enough span of time, specifically the number of unread messages you have.
Okay, so there has been a saying in academic computing circles for a very, very long time that any program eventually evolves to read email. So and Heather, I apologize. I just sent you an email because I really want to talk to you about your research. But I've taken kind of a different approach because I'm deeply nerdy on this stuff. And so I have for almost 20 years run my own email server, which has its own problems because, you know, it's like I've got to get my email accepted by Microsoft and Google and Yahoo and all the others. But my approach has been quite different. So what I do, since I run my own email server, is if I enter my email address on any vendor website, they get an email address that is their domain name at my domain name, which has led to a couple of very interesting discoveries. That a major bourbon distilling company was breached a couple of years ago, and somebody downloaded their entire email database and started spamming them. And when I contacted said large bourbon distilling company about this via LinkedIn, they denied that event having ever happened. And I replied back and said, well, here's the 3 spam messages I've gotten. And this email address was known only to your IT department.
Right.
Please explain. Crickets chirping. Delete email address. No more spam. So that's been my deeply nerdy approach. That works.
You're basically using the Gmail solution where you do the plus after your name and have all the aliases. Since you control your own domain because you have your own email server, you have literally any name you want at your server.
Right, but the plus thing, if a humanoid ever looked at that, and by humanoid I mean human or AI that understands that plus rule, they could then resolve the true email address and start spamming.
You're right that a fairly not very bright AI spam system could figure out what the email address is. Yours, you'd need a really smart AI to figure it out.
You would need to literally hack my server to download my vert user table and figure out what active email addresses there are on my domain.
So hey, I just noticed we're 2 minutes away from the end. Yeah. So go ahead, Heather, and I just wanted to give an alert.
So do you mean that you would just be like, you know, let's say it's, you know, Burger King, like you were saying. Exactly. So you would say Burger King at chrisboyd.com. I'm just making something up. Right. And then McDonald's at chrisboyd.com. Is that what you would do?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. That's all I need to know. Thank you. Now I'm on another mission.
You've just solved her problem. So congrats.
No, I'm so angry about it all. Like I get so much stupid stuff, but it's not even spam. It's people that I've given money to, right? And then you get on everybody's lists, and then I spent all day yesterday unsubscribing, you know? So
that's the hell of it. You get on all these lists and it takes forever to unsubscribe.
Right.
Political campaigns are perfect because under the anti-spam laws, they can spam you if they know, and anybody else that they're affiliated with can spam you. For me, it's just like, oh, comment out that email address and never use it again. Wow. I don't ever hear from Beto O'Rourke anymore.
It could just be that we could avoid some of these problems by using the smartphones for the old purpose of phone calls rather than sending emails. That might cut out a lot of the misunderstandings that occur because, you know, I've been guilty of, you know, sending John, you know, a comment, you know, on Slack that I didn't word it, well, perhaps. It was totally misunderstood. Whereas getting on to Zoom or on the phone, it was easily cleared up. Oh, that's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure everyone has experienced that. You send a text and someone says, what did you mean by that?
You put a period after yes, Scoop. That's too aggressive.
We have reached the end of the line. It is time for us to drop off. Anybody have a last word?
Fun as always.
Yeah, this was a blast.
We'll be back if you'll have us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's make this a regular thing.
Hack the planet.
All right.
Hack the planet, y'all.
All right. See you. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, everyone.
You all.
Happy holidays
all
and
a
all
good
that
night.
jazz.
Hanukkah
Right on.
tomorrow.